Welcome back to How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom, Anime Review Episode number 9. This will be the 9th episode of the series, Contrary to Wishes. This episode adapts from the epilogue from Book 1, which, yeah, that's quite obvious, and it already kind of starts adapting Book 2. It adapts with a prelude of the book, and it also covers a portion of Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. And you're thinking, wait, what about Chapter 1? Well, after rereading it, I realized, though, that wait, they actually did cover this chapter already. Well, I should point out, though, that throughout the previous, from episodes 2 through 8, they had these opening narrations to explain certain things about the kingdom. And I think they took that from Chapter 1 of Book 2. Episode 9 is the first one since Episode 1 do not have an opening narration. Which I'm like, that's interesting. And we get a lot of stuff happening in this episode. We start off with the epilogue of Book 1. We have the three Dutcheries, Excel, Gorge, and Kester, where they're basically having a discussion of basically what they're going to do. Now, in the case of Excel, she basically, it's implied, more in the book per se than the actual episode itself, that she's on Sotoma's side. Chester himself is basically is with George on this particular thing. George basically is against the Sotoma purely because it disregards basically tradition of the kingdom. That's simply the reason for it. And they go back and forth for a while, and then of course also Excel tells Chester, if you're going to do this, cut off all ties to Carla and like two other people that I think is Excel. And then Carla herself comes in. Carla is Chester's daughter. And she refers to Excel as grandmother. Well, there's a reason for this. You want to know the reason for this? Because Chester, who is the commander of the Air Force for the Freya Kingdom, is in fact Excel's son-in-law. Yes, seriously. And Carla is his daughter and Excel's granddaughter, which means we've seen two of the grandchildren on the show. First being Juna, who looks almost exactly like her grandmother, and her granddaughter too. Oh, by the way, her lines in the episode are almost spot on from the actual book itself, where she's of the opinion that Sultama forced the Karen King off the throne and forced himself on the Lucia. That actually is from the book. By the way, she did say this, and it's completely untrue. He did not do this at all. Yep. So then we cut to basically seeing. Now, there's actually a scene from I think it was a prelude. If I remember, I think it was from chapter 2. I think it was. There's a section in the book thing where we have Juna going to comfort Sotoma. Now, there's actually a big chunk missing here. What is missing is basically Asiya asking Juna to comfort Sotoma over what happened with the landslide. Excuse me, the anime cut this out for some reason. Before continuing with this, I have to talk about the Republic of Ardea. Now, this is actually the first time since the pilot episode the country's been seen. And we see a couple scenes in here with Princess Rona, a very beautiful woman who in the English dub is voiced by Jad Saxton, who I did watch the pilot episode, really good. And as far as I can tell, she did not appear in episodes 2 through 8. Mainly because she was not in the material they adapted for. So basically they didn't cut her in the episode. So we see her Millennium Plan with this guy named Sebastian, who turns out is actually her butler. And then we see her later on after. Now, there's actually a scene here they actually cut out here, which that's probably from the second half of chapter 1, where she basically is meeting up with her father and brother, discussing the upcoming, potential war, which of course George basically mentions that he's been in contact with the Principality of Armenia, I think it's the pronounced name of the country. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Let's see, where are you, Roma? Yep, where are you, Roma? There you are. It is. Let's see. Principality of Armenia. I think it's pronounced in the country. Mm-hmm. Yes. Uh, according to her father, Galas, which they actually don't refer to. I think they don't refer to him as a prince in the actual episode. They refer to him as a king. In the book, they refer to him as a prince, despite the fact he's the ruler of the country. I guess that they changed this because I guess the people who makes the episode probably thought this was strange. Like, why would a prince be automatically declared sire or your majesty even though his title is prince? Yeah, I kind of get the reason why they changed that. They changed it because it made more sense to call him king than calling him a prince. Because this guy looks like presumably in his 40s, I'd say. Though he's got a beautiful teenage daughter. And he basically is, talking with his son Julius, who actually does appear in the books. In case you're curious, though, this is not a complete and original character. Julius himself does appear in books 2, 3, and he appeared as recently as book 7. I know because I've read the books. He actually is not in books 4 through 6. I think he's mentioned a few times, but he does not make a physical appearance at all. Though there is a reason for that, and, it's because of the events of Book 2. Where, basically, the scene between him and his father, that's pulled directly from the book, Book 2, it's pretty much spot on. I don't think they cut any dialogue from the scene. And then later on, they actually have him meeting with his generals, where he's about to basically go to war with Ephria, and his minister his finance minister basically saying, yeah, this is a terrible idea. You're basically going to starve your country going to war with them. And then he gets kicked in the face by the king. Yes, this happens in book 2, so don't worry about that. And a lot of the dialogue that comes next, basically, where, declare war, you're violating the Mankind Declaration. And Julius, it seems like he's about to basically hit him again, when Julius steps in and is like, technically he is actually not, technically he's not violating the treaty because Ephria is not a member, is not a signing of the treaty. Which, that actually is true. Which, as far as I've read in the books, they have not signed that treaty at all, so don't worry about that. So, basically because he dared to criticize the king, and because he's against the actions, he basically removes his position as the finance minister. They do cut the bit, basically put under house arrest. Yes, they do cut that out of the anime, probably because it made no sense, based on the fact that, here's the thing, implied by that means he'd be forced back to his house and not be able to go out. So, he leaves the castle and meets up with Rona, the princess. He mentions, oh yeah, we're going to disappear for a while. And they cut the bit basically where all the bureaucrats just disappeared. Yeah, they completely cut that out. That's actually from chapter 2. So basically where that scene ends, that's like partway into chapter 2. And then we cut to later on with the whole thing with Juna meeting with Sotoma over what happened with the landslide from last episode. Yeah, that actually does not mention the landslide, but he basically is being discomforted, so Judah basically comforts him. It's pretty much the same scene as in the actual book itself. So, then later on, he summons the actual 3 ducheries, where he basically has a chat with them about basically the fact that about them planning to rebel against the king. And, of course, the discussion itself between the 3 of them, I gotta say, the anime kept in, all 3 of these people's dialogue from this scene. I was actually quite surprised about that. I would probably say that I think, the only thing they actually added was basically George adding a line later on, basically, because it was a Sia. There was a scene, I think they actually made this anime original where I think so, I'm not really sure. Even though I did reread the chapter, but I don't remember this actually happened in the book, where basically Lassie is talking with Sotoma, and basically him asking her to do a favor for him. And of course meets up with, the 3 ducheries in the dual broadcasting room. Yes, this actually happened in the book, and of course it comes from chapter 3. This ultimatum basically stand with me or I will fight you. And this begins basically object suffocation. So he goes Duchess Water first, where their discussion is pretty much the same. Like they mentioned about Lagoon City, and they mentioned basically his new city as well. He mentions that basically now this portion of the dialogue actually is slightly altered for the anime because they mentioned the whole thing about the military complex not being proper mixed with city. And in the anime, he says, he says this. This is according to the way that they subbed it. That her city, Lagoon City, will remain the primary navy port for the country. This is our one just a tourist city. And since the fact that basically satisfies her, she pretty much agrees to support him. Chester does not agree. He, of course, is basically against him. And, of course, and then we have George, basically. Of course, before all this, they do all introduce themselves, because it's the first time they ever met each other. Which, in case you're curious, though, this is mostly the same. I think, they cut out a line from Duchess, from Duchess Excel, where, basically, she's telling Chester to basically just to act polite, please. Be formal, because you're meeting with the king. And that actually is cut off from the anime, probably for good reason, because it was probably not necessary. It's just a line. So basically, cutting out that line does not really affect the scene from what I can tell. No, it doesn't. And of course, he basically agrees that he will not support the king. George has the same thing, basically mentioned about his pride as a warrior. And it looks like they're about to basically sign off these two because they're going against them. And Lucia does something she does in the book too, where she cuts her hair. She takes her sword out, takes little hair, and cuts it. Now, what George says is actually not from the book at all. It actually is from the It's Complete in original line, where he says, "I accept your resolve," and the dialogue is basically implying he accepts basically that she's a very strong person, and the fact that she basically has, possibly fulfilled some kind of potential or something. But that line he said was complete and original. Though the Duke of Sultan's line of him saying, "Did you really need to cut your hair?" Which, I get the reason why they cut that, because they probably didn't think the line was necessary. And then of course, Chester and George basically sign off. And they revealed the reason why Excel was able to side with the king was because her beautiful granddaughter convinced her to do it. Juna. Yeah, they revealed in this episode they're actually grandmother-granddaughter. Which, unless you read the books, you probably would have no idea these two were related at all. Aside from the fact that she bears a striking resemblance to her. I mean, some people think, "Oh, is she basically her daughter?" No, it's her granddaughter. That basically makes Carla, who is Chester's daughter, her cousin, and Chester being her uncle. Yep. I gotta say, damn good episode. I love it. This was it's just really good. They basically kept a lot of some of the dialogue. I mentioned about the whole disagreement with the other countries. They kept that in, which I'm so appreciative of that, because this is actually, that was important dialogue. And I gotta say, like I said, just a damn good episode. And I can't wait for next week. I just love this series. Now, how far they're gonna go with next week, I don't know. And here's the strange thing, though. I think the series, because I look up online, apparently, even though this is not really confirmed yet, there's roughly 4 episodes left. I'm really hoping that they actually don't rush this book and cut too much stuff from the actual book itself. But the stuff they have kept in the anime so far, good job, JC staff. You've done an excellent job so far with the series. We're only 9 episodes in. We're only got 4 episodes left for the season, and I'm hoping we get a season 2 because there's still plenty of material to have from. Okay. So yeah, that's a particular view. Excuse me, I wouldn't have time to do Case of Atlantis, which obviously is next one, but I'm going to have to do it tomorrow due to the fact it's almost 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. 11 o'clock, and the fact I got church in the morning. So I probably have to do that tomorrow along with case closed. So I have to basically add on to, in case you're curious though, with Combat and Dispatch basically be concluded last week. Well, pretty much last week as of tomorrow. Sunday is now down to officially to 4 anime. Yep, 4, which are Eden Zero, My Hero Academia, One Piece, and Barto. Though I'm going to have to add Case of Atlantis to tomorrow, basically because I didn't have time to do it right now. And kind of the same thing with, well, Case Closed. Basically, here's all the orders basically for anime for tomorrow. First, obviously, be Eden Zero. That'll be the first anime I'll cover tomorrow. And then I'll cover the Case of Atlantis, then My Hero Academia, One Piece, Boruto, and I might do Case Closed first, then Boruto, because that came like the day before, which is today. And I'll include Boruto, roughly about 6 anime I'll be discussing tomorrow. And here's kind of the interesting thing that comes to me. Like, after today, I pretty much got like the next 3 days off, so I basically have plenty of time to cover this stuff. Yep. But see you in the next video. Bye.